Hey everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin. This is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Beginner Violin, adapted from the Alias Music Introductions course for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 3 today. So just as a review, we covered our G major scale last time, the beginning of our first nursery rhyme, Mary Had Little Lamb, and talked a little bit about higher and higher and lower second finger positions, and kind of assigned the rest of Mary Had Little Lamb. And so I want to go over what's coming next for the rest of the songs, just a couple things to watch out for, and then we're going to take a look at working with the bow today. All right, so if you wrote in all of your strings and fingers for Mary Had Little Lamb, it should look like this. So you can check against your work. I'll write in a little bit of Twinkle also. But essentially your job will be to keep working and finish up plucking all of the nursery rhymes. And then we will get to working with the bow as well. So you should have finished this for homework. And you can go ahead and play along with me. This is the assignment. No matter how far we get, don't forget the details about our form that we talked about. How you hold your instrument, how you hold your left hand, the rounded left fingers. So as you move on to your next songs, these are the markings for your arrows for Twinkle. So if you haven't copied those into your part, go ahead and do so. You can pause and copy them here, or do so after the video. These are the arrows for Are You Sleeping? And these are the arrows for London Bridge. So make sure you have those copied. And just as you are working on them, let's say you're going on to Twinkle, just watch out for large leaps, right? So for example, right here, you have a note on the second space from the bottom. So you're just gonna find that same note right here. That is A0. And so it's the same thing. You're gonna write down A0, another A0, then you have a large leap. That jumps all the way up to here. So you find this note is on the top space right here. And here's that note right there. So that's E0. So you're going to go ahead and write down E0. And at this point, if you've been practicing your G major scale, you're probably starting to remember the sequence. And you kind of notice that the next note does not leap. It just steps up one. So like up one note from E0 is going to be E1. So sometimes you don't even have to look. This one just goes down one. It's going to be E0. And then you just have to remember that when you get to E0 and you go down one more, just like over here, like here's E0, you're going to end up going to A3 then on your next note. So that's going to be A3. So you can start to memorize your scale and use that to help you figure out your notes. So this is only a partial version of Twinkle, but it sounds like this. So you can work on writing in the rest of the notes for the rest of the songs here. Please do not go on past the end of London Bridge, as we'll go on next to the Bach Minuet in G. We'll do that in a later class. So the homework is all the songs. Before we move on to lesson 4, you have to have all the songs learned. So let me go ahead and jot that down here to update our homework. So we've got, at this point, you should still pluck your scale 3 times. And now you can learn all. All right, NRS, just short for Nursery Rhyme Suite. These are all of our nursery rhymes. And pluck each 3 times. As much as you think you know it, just keep on going, because as soon as you start adding the bow, your full attention is going to be on the bow, and you're not going to want to be thinking about the left hand at all. So the more you know the left hand, the better. Keep practicing it. So with that said, our next agenda is let's get introduced to the bow and how it works. So I will introduce the parts of the bow here. So here is our typical violin bow. So this whole area here is the frog, all of this. A little circle in the middle is called the eye of the frog. We have the screw over here. This is the leather guard. And then oftentimes you guys will have a metal guard here. This is particular bow has whalebone. It's actually a faux whalebone, not actual whalebone. And then on the bottom is the bow hair. So the bow hair will have rosin on it. And if you have rosin, you will just unwrap your rosin or unpack your rosin, and you will rub a little bit of rosin on your bow every time you play with it. Now for this lesson, we will just do a little bit of playing with the bow. And for each time, what you're going to do is you're going to rosin a little bit at the frog, kind of like 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You're going to go 3 times all the way across the bow. 1, 2, 3. And then 3 more at the tip. You're just going to need a little bit more grab with your bow at the ends of the bow. So that's why we get a little bit more rosin into the bow there. So that's our bow. And let's take a look at how the bow hand works. So I'm going to diagram it for you guys. All right, so some more of my excellent drawing skills here. See how well my mouse is working today. It's pretty good. So here's our frog. Here's our bow hair. And by the way, make sure you don't touch your bow hair. The bow hair with the rosin on it, you know, whether you have oily skin or dry skin, it's going to leave a little bit of skin oil residue, and it's going to clump together with the rosin, and will basically make your bow unplayable. It's actually the rosin that grabs the string and makes the sound. So make sure you don't actually touch the bow hair. When you're touching the bow, only touch it by the shaft here. I forgot to introduce, this is our tip right here. That's actually the weakest point of the bow, so be careful, don't hit it on anything. So only touch the shaft or the frog area, but don't touch the hair. All right, maybe one more thing just for you guys before you even start using it. So the screw can be used to tighten or loosen the bow hair. So like if I really loosen the bow hair, it's going to look like this. So if you can kind of see it, the bow's hair is kind of all fuzzy and loose. So, and if I tighten it, it tightens back up into a sort of clean line. And you want the bow just lightly tightened. If you were to just take your instrument, you should still be able to press the bow on the string, just lightly press in the middle, and the wood should touch the hair. If it touches the hair with no tension at all, then it will, then it's too loose. And if you have to press down hard to make it touch the hair, or it doesn't touch down, or for example, you'll notice the bow has just a tiny downward curve to it. So that little downward curve, if that turns into a flat or upward curve, then that is way too tight and you got to loosen it. Turning clockwise will tighten it, and counterclockwise will loosen it. All right, so now I think you got everything you need to know for the bow. So we have really 3 main control points for the bow. One is right here. This is where our thumb goes. Okay, it's like our first control point. Okay, and our thumb sort of acts as a pivot point, as a fulcrum for our bow. And the bow can now move around my thumb. So my thumb is sort of in a coat hook position, and my bow will rest right there, right in between the step of the frog right here, and the leather guard. So that's our leather guard. All right, so that's where the thumb goes. And you see my thumb is lightly rounded. That is very important that your thumb is lightly rounded. My second control point is right here. And that's where my pinky goes. I'm just going to abbreviate it with a P. That's where my pinky goes. So my thumb is here. My pinky's right here. If I were to press with my pinky, my bow goes up. Okay, so thumb is here, pinky here. I press, bow goes up. So in other words, the pinky is in charge of lightening the bow. And over here on the other side of the leather guard is where my index finger goes. And this, if I were to kind of do the same thing, set my thumb in the middle, that's my focal point, my axis around which it moves. My pinky would make the bow move up, but if I were to take my index finger and press, it would make the bow go down, so it makes it go heavier. Now for now, you're not even going to really need that control point. The bow is just heavy enough itself to make good sound, so you won't need more than that. So we're going to do a bow hand setup exercise. So you're going to take your bow kind of in the middle but towards the frog with your left hand. So pick up your bow with your left hand and make sure the frog is facing your right hand. Okay, and you're going to make a round sort of, think of like a bagel with your shape with your thumb. And then you're going to set that thumb right here in between the leather guard and the step. You're going to put all your fingers are going to wrap around, kind of nice and deep. You should almost be able to like touch past the bottom of the frog. So all these other fingers hang, and then your pinky goes on top. And that is essentially the setup for your bow hand. Now one last thing, my middle finger should be across from my thumb. So it basically should just be just on the other side of my thumb is where my middle finger ends up. So this is the order to set up the bow hand. Okay, it is number one is I create my round thumb between my step and the guard. Number two is I wrap all fingers around with my middle across from my thumb. And lastly, I set my pinky rounded on top. So essentially there are three positions for all of your fingers. They will all fit into one of three positions. Your thumb is rounded underneath the bow, and it doesn't, careful that it doesn't stick through. Let me switch over to the camera here again. So be careful that it doesn't stick through. Like you don't want it sticking through the bow. You want it with the pad of your thumb just kind of sitting between the step on the shaft. And if you're wondering how round you should make it, if your knuckle of your thumb touches your hair, it's probably round enough. That's actually probably too round, but it's good for beginners to start that rounded. Then you take all of your, so that's my thumb position. All my other fingers hang over with my middle finger across from my thumb. And then I just set my pinky on top. And here's the exercise. You're going to carefully and gently let go and balance it. And then you're going to take your wrist and tilt it down. You can tilt with your whole arm and point your bow down at the floor. Now, as you point it down at the floor, you notice all the weight comes off your pinky. And then you're going to tilt your wrist back up and don't let it slip. Balance that pinky, bring it back to level. And you're going to do that 3 times. So I suggest doing that for several days. This is your bow hand setup exercise, or we can think of it as your bow lift. Okay, so now you're going to do your bow lift exercise 3 times. Once you have done that for a couple days, you will probably be ready to start using your bow. And now we've done everything that we need to set up our violin and actually play with the bow. and we will do all the steps just as if we were kind of setting everything up for the first time. You know, you see experienced players just pick up their instrument, but they do every step every time. So you're going to, and if you have a music stand, you can actually set your bow off the edge of the music stand so that the frog kind of sticks out, and then you can just grab the frog there. So, but I'm going to take my violin, set it on the shoulder, turn my chin, going to set my chin on the chin rest, set up my left hand. Now I can reach down, pick up my bow. If your bow is sitting off the music stand or kind of off the edge of a table with only the frog sticking out, I can set up my thumb, wrap it around. I know you can't see it at the second. I'll wrap all my fingers down, set my pinky up on top, and I will set my bow down near the frog. Okay, so it's not all the way near the frog, but just kind of close to the frog. So I'm going to pick the A string first. It's kind of like one of our middle strings. It's a good one to practice on. And I am going to check that my thumb is rounded, my pinky's rounded, everything's hanging. And I'm going to move my bow, what's called down bow, from the frog to the tip. It looks like this. And then back. So it is one time up and down. You'll do that 4 times. And you'll do the same thing on the D string. And then the G string. And finally back over to the E string. I did it 1 time up and down on each string, but you will do it 4 times. Now, your sound may crack. It may have abrupt changes. You have lots of things that you don't like. Don't worry about it for now. Do your best. You will just try to intuitively make it work and just do those repetitions. One thing that you should watch out for is when you move your bow down, bend your wrist away from you. And when you move your bow up, bend your wrist towards you. So down. And you can even take your finger and just kind of like help push it down. Then back up towards you. Away from you and towards you. So this is called wrist pronation. So wrist away, wrist towards you. Keep all of your fingers in the right positions, and that is your second exercises. Those are called our whole bow exercises. 4 times each string, up and down. You should still be doing your posture exercise, but at this point, you do not need to do your 4-3-2-1-0 scale anymore. All right, that will do it for today's lesson. I will see you guys on lesson 3.